2022 is nearly over. Have you been having the kind of year that you wanted? Do you want to make 2023 your best year ever? Of course you do. That's why you're here. Unfortunately, most people look to the new year with optimism, thinking this will finally be your breakthrough year. But it often ends up much like the year before it, with some wins, some losses, but without any real ground gained. So, what does it really take to finally have a life changing year? The fastest way is not always the best way, but in this case, the best way also happens to work quite fast. So, in this video, you will learn a simple shift in the way you approach making decisions, the big life ones, the small ones, and every decision in between that will change your life immediately. And we're going to do an exercise a little bit later where you will actually get to experience that. So you'll know how immediate, what I mean by immediate. It's simple and anyone can do it. It's just a matter of will you do it? If you don't, you risk having another year of more of the same. So let's change that starting right now. So, what's really getting in your way is probably going to surprise you, but I'll just come right out with it right now. Self importance. Now, right away, you're probably thinking, I mean, arrogance, and you're thinking you don't have that problem. Perhaps you think you have the opposite problem, like you lack confidence and you struggle with low self worth. And this is why it's so surprising, because both arrogance and feelings of low self worth originate from the same problem. Both put way too much emphasis on the idea of yourself, which is only a concept. I'll talk more about this later. And because it's a concept, it means it can also be changed. That's the good news. But like I said, more on that a little bit later. Arrogance is an overemphasis on your positive attributes to the point that you take credit for things that you didn't do and you blame others for your mistakes. Feelings of low self worth happens when you focus too much on the negatives that you believe about yourself and you also take responsibility for things that are not your doing, that are not your fault, that you shouldn't really be taking responsibility for. All right. Just making sure everything is going okay, that we're on. Okay. So there's a very specific reason why this happens. This is not just like, I know most of the time our feelings feel like they just kind of come and go randomly. And sometimes you feel confident, and then suddenly you'll feel like you lack confidence or you have no self worth. It can kind of feel like it just moves around and there seems to be no rhyme and reason to it. But there is. So there is a reason for this. And that reason is uncertain sense of self. Self importance, whether that's you being arrogant or you being feeling of low self worth, comes from that uncertain and shaky sense of self. So, what creates an uncertain sense of self? The answer to that is ambiguity. More importantly, ambiguity about being the kind of person you want to be, the type of person you believe has high value. So, what I'm talking about here is actually the key to true self esteem and true confidence, and not the kind you can fake, because there's a lot out there on little tricks and things that you can do to fake confidence. But of course, that never lasts. I'm talking about lasting confidence, lasting confidence, lasting self esteem, not the kind that just sort of comes and goes. Somebody tells you something that you don't like, and suddenly your self esteem drops and your confidence drops. That if confidence is dropping in you or your self esteem is dropping, when people just by what people say to you, something's not right. Meaning you're not very certain about who you are, what that sense of self is. So when you solve that problem, you're going to move mountains in your life. You know, just having more confidence. Sometimes people think, well, yeah, I want more of that, but how does that really change what I do? Well, it changes everything. And what I'm getting down to here is your choices and your decisions. If you're making choices and decisions, well, let's back up. Take a snapshot of your life as it is right now. The good and the bad. How is that continuing to exist? How is that continuing to be the way that it is? That comes down to your choices and your decisions. And for most people, they're not aware of that because most of their choices and their decisions feel quite automatic. And they are, because that's what we do as our minds are hardwired to find ways to save energy and to put everything on autopilot. So you don't even realize the choices and the decisions that you're making because they're so automatic. And so it just feels like, well, this is just the way that it is. I walk out my front door, my day goes the way that it goes, and then I come home, eat dinner, go to bed, and that's just how it happens. But you are making decisions all of the time, all throughout that. And so when you can start realizing what those decisions are and start changing them in ways that change your life cannot not change. When you start doing things differently, your life has to change. There's no way it can stay the same. So let's talk about that more and about what are those right decisions for you to make. And I like to use two extreme examples for this. And I know it's going to sound like I'm getting a little political here. Trust me, I'm not. I am not going to talk politics, but at first it might sound that way. So let's just get over that part really quickly. So let's use one extreme. One extreme would be Buddha. Buddha being this person who can sit under a tree and just be happy and fulfilled with that. And Buddha can get up and go get a glass of water, and Buddha just feels happy and fulfilled with that. Anything Buddha decides to do, whatever the daily activities are, whether they're something that is mundane or something that is fun and interesting, Buddha just is fulfilled pretty much all the time. Now that's an extreme. Nobody is going to become that, or maybe you will. Don't want to stand in your way about with that, but in general, that's not realistic for us, right? But that's an extreme. That's the direction we want to move in. That if we succeed or if we fail, it doesn't matter because we're still our self worth is intact, our sense of self is intact. We don't feel like just from a failure that we suddenly lose all of our or all of our value. Now imagine that if your self worth was never at stake, no matter what you did, what would you not do? Because that for most of us, that's what the stakes are. We don't even think about this most of the time. Most of us won't take action on something because what feels like what's at stake is our self worth. But what if that wasn't? What if there was no such thing? So that no matter what you did, it was all going to be fine. So you could fail as many times as you needed to fail in order to succeed, because that's what success it really is failing enough times until you succeed. And never feel like you're a person of lower self-worth because of that failure. In fact, you might even feel the opposite because you have that experience and you go, okay, well, I learned something that I didn't have before. I'm resilient. I can see my resilience because I'm bouncing back. I'm getting out there and doing it again. And resilience, when people are resilient, they're very confident. So it's a great quality to have. Now, what is the other opposite polar extreme to this? And that's where it's going to sound like I'm getting political, but I'm not. Trump, Donald Trump. Okay. Now, this is the opposite extreme of Buddha. This is a person who chases self importance externally, who needs constant external validation. He needs to be constantly talked about. He wants to be constantly in the public eye. He needs to have his name on big buildings, like, well, the big buildings in cities or a wall. Have you ever seen him laugh sincerely on a video? Or like, because I've never seen him in person, but like, and probably you haven't either, but try to find a video where he's laughing sincerely. It does not exist, which tells me he's likely a very, very unhappy and empty person because he's constantly needing to validate himself because he can't do it himself. So all of his decisions are based in self-importance, trying to make himself look powerful. He judges his self-worth by how much money he makes, by how many people show up at his rallies. We're talking crowd size. Like he's always talking about his crowd size. And people who do this, who make all their decisions based on self-importance rather than fulfillment, these people can be like in the sense of accomplishing a lot. So I'm not saying that you can't accomplish a lot by doing that. You actually can. But what's the point of that if it's miserable? What's the point of that if it's empty? And that's what chasing power does. And we're going to actually do an exercise because I want you to experience exactly what I'm talking about. Chasing power, because this comes up as a value for a lot of times when I'm working with clients. It's very seductive. But anytime you've gotten a little bit of power, what happens? It's never enough. You got to go for more. So it's very seductive. It's like a drug. It's very seductive, but once you get some of it, it's not enough. So you want more of it. It's not fulfilling. It's the opposite of fulfilling. But then we chase it, and we chase it more and more. And you got to be really careful with something like that because power always implies power over someone else or over something else. So it always has. That's part of the equation of power. So let's move on a little bit, and I want you to think about making big life decisions. What are some of the big life decisions that you make? What are some of the small decisions that you make? What drives those decisions? It's not, and like I said, most of this is unconscious. We go to the store, we make decisions on what we buy. We think about where to invest our money. What decisions drive that? Or even saving money, or you want to take on an endeavor to make more money. What's driving that? Is it is Are your decisions driven by preservation of your ego? Or is it driven by very specific values that you're aware of, like happiness, joy, peace, passion? Most people never go that deep with their decisions. They're kind of just on the fly making these decisions. So, what are self important decisions? Well, like I said, preservation of your ego. What will that do to you? Well, it'll often make you not want to try something because if you try it and you fail, then if you're trying to save your ego, that your ego takes a hit, and that's very painful, especially if you believe that you can actually your value fluctuates. So any decision that you make that's trying to preserve your ego is a self-important decision, and that will limit you because they say the person who makes no mistakes does nothing at all. That's why. You can claim, oh yeah, I didn't make any mistakes, but you pretty much have to never do anything to never make to never make mistakes. So almost every decision you make that's based on fear is a self-important decision. Now, if you make a decision, uh, you can argue. Some people will probably argue. If you make a decision to not do something because it's dangerous, well, that's based in fear, and that's like maybe if you think about it a lot, but I don't have to think about it a lot. Like I'm not going to go jump off of a cliff, not because I sit around thinking about not jumping off of a cliff and I get scared. It's just I go, that's dumb. Why would I jump off of a cliff? Makes no sense. So I don't really sit around and fear those things. But when you think about the things that you fear, the things that you want to do but you're not doing because you're afraid, those are actually self-important decisions because again, it goes back to what I was saying that you're trying to preserve your ego. And if you make a mistake, or if you screw up, or if you fail, you're you're uncertain enough about who you are that you're afraid that that might now mean that you're a failure. And so it's very limiting when you make decisions based out of fear. And one way to cure that very quickly is just to think about, okay, well, if that's what I'm afraid of, what do I want instead? What do I want instead? And then when you can get focused on what you want instead and get it stated in the positive, then make decisions based on that. That'll take you so much further, so much further than focusing on what you don't want because you can't get anywhere when you focus on what you don't want. I use this analogy a lot. You go to a clothing store, the clerk walks up to you and says, "What can I help you with?" And you say, "I don't want socks." The clerk will say, "Okay, I won't show you any socks. What do you want?" And then you say, "I don't want any shirts." The clerk says, "Okay, I won't show you any shirts. What do you want?" And you sit there and all you do is name all the things that you don't want. You're going to be there all day. And maybe through the process of elimination, you might get to the part where you actually state what it is that you want. When the whole time you could have just stated what it is that you wanted, and the clerk would have taken you right there. So in life, it works very much the same way. Focus on what you want instead of what you don't want. You'll get there much, much faster. Now, what other decisions are self-important decisions? Decisions that are based on elevating your status, on elevating or getting external validation, and decisions that are based on how others will perceive you. Now, I'm not saying you should completely get rid of these things. I'm just saying that they shouldn't drive your decisions. So if something elevates your status and it benefits you in some way, it's not necessarily a bad thing. But if your decision is driven solely based on elevating your status, that's going to be very empty. Once you get to that status, you go, okay, now I'm here. What now? Well, I got it. You're gonna feel the need to have more status because it's not enough. You're gonna always want more. But if you're making a decision that is based on, okay, well, this would be really good for my career, which is really good for me because I enjoy my career. I love what I do. And if I do this thing, it's going to elevate my status in my career, which then enables me to do more of what I want to do. Okay, that's a great decision. I'm going to do that because that status will only enable you to do more of what you want to do. That makes sense. So that's not a, I wouldn't call that a self-important decision. Anything that's external, that's based on external validation, like I'll win this award, and it's okay to win awards, nothing wrong with that. But if the whole reason you're doing that is to win that award, I assure you it will be so incredibly empty. Once you do it, you'll have, some exhilaration from having won the award, but it will evaporate extremely quickly. But if you have more reasons, like you're fulfilling something real, some real values, and you win that award, and it's like, well, the award doesn't give you that experience. You made that experience happen for yourself. And then winning the award is just a nice little, icing on the cake, as they say. And if you're constantly making decisions on how others perceive you, again, you don't really know how others perceive you, first of all. Secondly, many different people will perceive you in all different ways. There's no way you can make everybody perceive you exactly the way that you want to be perceived. So that will drive you crazy and will always make you insecure and anxious because you're not focused on your own perception of yourself, your own fulfillment. You're going around trying to chase everybody down and make them like you. And it's just never going to happen. So, what are fulfilling decisions? What can you do? How can you make decisions that will fulfill you? And this is the game changer. If you focus on the next year, 2023, making decisions that fulfill you, and you're able to discern the difference between the decisions that fulfill you and the decisions that are based in self-importance, I guarantee you 2023 will be unlike any year you've ever had. It will absolutely change the game for you. It will change your life. So how do we know what's the difference? How do we know when we're making fulfilling decisions? Fulfilling decisions are based on your values. And most people don't know what their values are. So in the description below this video, I did leave a resource for you on how to elicit your values. And you also have to be careful with what those values are, because like I mentioned earlier, many people will see power as a value and power as a quality of being, but that's a trap. So you got to be careful what those values are. And it's more about clarifying them. I've done a video on this where if you search my name and values, you will find the video. It's values to watch out for because they often come up, but they're traps. So what would be some good values that your decisions are based on? The choice that you're making, that you're considering, does it make you happier? Does it make you more joyful? Does it give you a greater sense of freedom? Is it something you're passionate about? These are all very high level values that most of us have. Most of us share these values, but there's more. There's always going to be more. And success is a value itself. And if we go after success as a value, can it be self important? Yes, it can. But we can make that. I've already explained what makes a self important decision. Success, if you're defining it by being able to fulfill multiple values by achieving something, that's a great success. So that kind of success meaning I get to fulfill myself through this endeavor, that's a great value. That success becomes a very, very fulfilling value. Also, decisions based on due diligence, meaning you gather the external information you need to make a good decision. Now, I think that's how most people go about this. But the problem is that you can do your due diligence, but if you don't know, if you're not connected with why you're making that choice. You can do due diligence, but that's not going to save you. You can still make a choice that's very unfulfilling, even though you could say, you could go back and say, well, it was a wise choice because it was low risk. The chances of me succeeding at this, were high. Okay. But what if you succeeded at something you don't really enjoy or that doesn't fulfill you? What's the point? You spend a lot of time and effort on something that's not really getting you where you want to be. So once you know what your values are behind the decision that you're considering, then do your due diligence, gather information. You want to make a wise choice. You want to make sure that you're considering all the factors that are important. Welcome external feedback, but never ever use external feedback to validate yourself. Now, what do I mean by external feedback? Well, just failing at something or succeeding at something. It's the information that comes back after, you try something, you gather information. And we say in NLP, there's no such thing as failure, only feedback. And if you can change your mindset around failure and view it only as feedback, you are going to be way ahead of the game. It's a really an amazing thing to treat failure as only feedback and nothing more. So feedback can also be the feedback from other people. All right. I don't look to other people to give me validation of who I am. You will never win that game. But I do look to other people to give me feedback about what they're seeing that I'm doing or that I'm saying, or how, I want to have a better understanding of how others perceive me. Very, very important in YouTube, especially. If my videos don't get a lot of views, that's feedback. If my videos do get a lot of views, that's feedback. I can say, okay, well, let me see what happened here. How can I figure out better how to reach people? I'm going to find what mistakes that I made in the video that didn't get many views. What mistakes or what good things did I do in the video that got a lot of views? That's feedback. And the more I can access that feedback without taking it personal, meaning I'm not looking at it to validate myself, or not validate or invalidate myself, I can use that information and immediately make adjustments and corrections. So you want to be open to that external feedback. And when people are very arrogant, they're not open to external feedback. They're not open to someone saying, "Hey, I think you could do this better," or you kind of screwed up here. But even if they're giving constructive criticism, when you're arrogant, you are blocking out. You're not taking responsibility for anything or any accountability for anything that you're doing, especially anything that might be a mistake. So you block out that feedback. That's a huge mistake because you're not getting that good information that can help you make those adjustments and those corrections. The person who feels like they're of low self-worth, if they get that negative feedback, they go, "Oh, well, I'm not good enough. I don't deserve it." And they start, beating up on themselves so that they continue to stay in that low self-worth state and they don't try anything else. But if you can depersonalize feedback and just look at it for what it is, it's one of the most important things that you can gather. And the last thing that I want to mention about making fulfilling decisions, it's making those decisions that are validated by you and no one else. Know what would be a good decision, what validates that as being a good decision before you make that decision. And that can even mean failing at something. You could say, okay, I'm making this decision and I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if I'm going to succeed or fail at this. But validation of this decision being a good decision is I get to learn something. I will know no matter what happens, I will know more than I did before I made this choice, which will then help me make the next choice, a better choice the next time, right? So get clear about what will validate that choice that you make. And remember to keep it out of everything that I just mentioned about trying to validate that through someone else. What is your validation of this choice? What makes this the right choice to make no matter what happens? And that's power. That's what I call empowerment. The Not the power of power over something else. It's finding that empowerment inside of you and saying, okay, this is my life. I get to validate what's good, what's not good for myself, my life, rather than leaving that up to anyone else. Right. So I promised you an exercise, and I will get to these comments and questions. that are piling up here in a second. I just want to make sure I get to everything that I wanted to get to. So I talked about self-importance, power, things like that. Another value that kind of summarizes that, I think, that it often comes up where, it's talking about some values that you will chase or traps. One of those is pride. People often do a values elicitation and pride comes up. And so I used to shoot that down right away, and I don't want to do that anymore because I think it's much, much better to actually give people an experience of what I mean rather than preach and tell them, well, don't do that. Okay. So, right now, think of something you're proud of. Think of something you're proud of in your life, something about you, something you did. Just think about that and feel that sense of pride. And we'll break this down a little bit later why I have these concerns about pride. But go ahead and let yourself feel that. Something you're proud of, something you did, something you are. I'll give you just a few moments to really feel that pride. Now, I know that it feels good. Okay, that's why we like pride because it feels good. But let's try and switch out pride. Well, before we do that, just kind of this is a hard thing to do without giving too much away. When you're feeling that pride, just get a sense of what you're capable of, where this takes you, what's next. Is this useful? Is this feeling useful? That's probably the best question I can ask you. How useful is this feeling of pride? Now, you know what it feels like to feel grateful. Everybody does. Everybody knows what gratitude feels like. So now I want you to remove the pride and replace it with gratitude for that same thing. The same thing that I asked you to find that you were proud of. I want you to replace pride with gratitude and notice how that feels. I'll give you a few moments to do that as well. So instead of feeling proud of this, what's it like when you feel grateful? Now, I don't have a time to go through it with everyone, but I'm sure what you're finding is, and I've done this many times before with different groups of people. Okay, so someone says far more meaningful. Yeah. Ask yourself, which one is more useful? That feeling of pride or that feeling of gratitude? Which one is more fulfilling? Which one holds more potential? Which one activates you more and makes you more engaged? I can almost tell you across the board for everyone, almost everyone, everybody's a little bit different. Gratitude every time is so much more useful, so much more fulfilling, so much more active, so much more engaging, so much more willing to motivate you to do more than pride ever will. Pride actually takes away your motivation to do things. You go, well, I've already done it. I'm already great. I don't need to do anything else, right? It's very limited. And somebody mentioned here that it feeling gratitude rather than power felt much more relaxing because you don't have to compete. Yeah, because power is always about comparing yourself to others. Gratitude is not. And that comparing yourself to others is always going to beat you down. You may use it temporarily to push yourself up, right? We do that sometimes. We say, well, at least I'm not as bad as that person. But that doesn't help you. And what that does is it locks you into that comparison, comparing yourself to others. If you do it with people you feel are of lower self-worth than you can't turn it off when you encounter people who you feel like are of higher self-worth. So then it beats you down. Right? Seems like you have something to uphold or hold up. Exactly. And with that relaxation that comes with gratitude, you have more energy. You can do more. Power will cripple you. So you can feel that right now. Now, if you want to take this further, well, let me say this before I say that. What I was going to say. What when you know when when a value is a really good value when it easily connects with other values at the same time, that they're very compatible. Okay, just like peace, love, joy, happiness, passion. These values fit together very, very well, like a like a like puzzle, like pieces to a puzzle for your fulfillment. And when you experience multiple value, high level values like that, it's very, very fulfilling. That's when you start having those feelings of being life really having meaning and you really feeling like you have a purpose. One way that you can know that a value is not a good one is see if you can experience it alongside other high level values. So gratitude is a very high level value. It's a very good value. It's very fulfilling. See if you can experience gratitude and pride at the same time. Give that a try. Now, if you can, then um, that's very unusual. I've never been able to experience both pride and gratitude at the same time. And every time I do this exercise with someone, they can't do it. Why? Because gratitude is very humbling and humbling in a good way. Humility is a good thing. Humility is a virtue. It's not like crapping all over yourself when somebody gives you a compliment. That's not humility. Humility is just knowing who you are and knowing what you're capable of and what you're not capable of. So it's very humbling, but gratitude, there's an aliveness to it that makes you want to do more, makes you want to really go for it. And at the same time, you're not trying to beat other people down, and you're not going to beat up on yourself either. That's another thing that gratitude sort of inoculates us from doing. Yeah, gratitude all day long will take you much further than pride or power ever could. Feeling grateful, you can feel pride. Well, we could sit down and maybe and talk that one out, but I think if you're in a state of gratitude, um, pride is you can't do both because they're opposites. What's funny is I know we're taught to feel pride, right? We're told to be proud of who we are, to be proud of our our nationality, to be proud of our race. And actually, I think this is what creates the majority of the world problems. We're taught all these things, and then we go to church, and our church tells us that pride's not good. It's one of the seven deadly sins. And then maybe we don't like organized religion, so we go to philosophy, and every major philosophy tells you pride is a trap. You don't want pride. So if every major religion and every major philosophy all says the same thing about pride, it's not good. Why are we telling each other we should be proud? We should be proud of accomplishments. We should be proud of our children. We should be proud of our nationality. How about flip pride and let's be grateful? I'm grateful to be the nationality that I am. I'm not proud of it. I didn't do anything to do it. My my parents had a lot more to do with it than me. So that again, I remember having that conversation for the first time I ever went to Europe, and I was talking to a friend who was from Switzerland. And he said, "Are you proud to be an American?" And I said, "Of course. Aren't you proud to be Swiss?" And he said, "Well, no, I didn't do anything to be Swiss. I was just born here." Wow, that was a mind blown moment right there. I'm grateful to be American. I'm not proud of it because I didn't do anything to earn it. I was just born here. Now, I would say you could make a much better argument if you were an immigrant who came here and made it work and became a citizen here. I would take that argument much better that this person feels a sense of pride to be this nationality. Okay, maybe a better argument. But if you really get honest with yourself and try to experience pride and gratitude at the same time, I think you will find it does not happen. It, and then the next step would be to explore why is that, and which one is more useful. But I've never found a good use for pride. It only creates problems. It only creates division among myself and others. Pride will be make you more likely to not take accountability for your mistakes, and it will make you more likely to take credit for things you have not done, which is very similar to a particular person with orange hair who I mentioned earlier in this video. Conclusion: when you take the time to ask yourself with every decision you make, if it's a decision that serves and fulfills your values, or if it's a decision that is driven by self importance, and you always choose your values, your life will change with every single decision you make. Big decisions, small decisions, and every decision in between. If you understand what your values are when it comes to a particular decision, and it changes from context to context, it will change from decision to decision. When you are consciously making decisions that align with your values and that fulfill your values, everything will change for you. I assure you, there is no way your life cannot change when you start having that kind of awareness. And every decision you make, you align it with your values. You cannot go wrong here. That doesn't mean that things won't always this does not mean that things will always work out perfectly. Mistakes will still happen. Our failures will still happen. But if you were clear from the beginning what your values were, what your intention was, another word for value, what your intention was before you went into something, even if it doesn't work out right, you will still be fine. You know why you did it. And you're not psychic, so you don't know exactly how things are going to work out. But if you align your decisions with your values, you do your due diligence, you cannot lose. In the end, you will remain fulfilled, and you will just take that information if it doesn't work out, well, even if it does, and you will take that information and integrate it into your next decision and your decision making going forward. So you can only win here. More tools in the tool belt. Yes. All right. So I'm going to back up and go through a few of these comments just to see if there's anything that I should address. Okay. How can an emotion have a color? I saw a video where Steve Andreas asked someone where in their body they felt a feeling and what color it was. It confused me. Feelings don't have color. Um, well, they can. There is a way, there always has to be a way in which you know that you're having a feeling. Now, for most of us, that's going to be a kinesthetic sensation. We call that kinesthetic evaluative, right? And very visual people will often code things in colors. And so it's more about employing your imagination, a little bit of your creativity, and you can say, well, if a feeling had a color, what color would that be? And for me, that's never been a hard thing to do. It easily pops up for me. So for some people who are not as visual, it might be a little more challenging, but it's a good exercise for your mind because we do that. We find ways to, in a sense, that color in that sense is kind of like a metaphor or a symbol. It's a symbol for a feeling, and it's just coded in a different way than a kinesthetic evaluative sensation. So I would practice that, in other words. Let's see. So it says, does that walk the line of arrogance? I'm not sure what that was referring to. Kid needs a hug and a timeout. Okay. Leslie says, visualizing a color for a feeling creates a somatic bridge between the conscious and unconscious mind that you can fine tune and change it. Very nice, Leslie. That's very true. Everyone else drove my decisions for a long time. Yeah, that won't make you feel good either. Um, let's see. I'm constantly worried about my decisions affect others. That's not a wrong thing. I wouldn't be worried, but that should be a consideration. So I'm not saying that when you're making decisions that they shouldn't involve other people. They should, because some of your values are going to be things like sympathy and empathy and kindness, right? So I want to make a decision that doesn't hurt people. I want to make, like, let's say my big life decisions. When I make big life decisions, well, I'm considering my wife, I'm considering my kids, right? So That's I'm not looking for them for validation though. There's a difference there. So you want to take other people into consideration and their feelings into consideration because that affects your well-being as well. But just what I'm saying is don't use their perception of you as validation of your decisions. That's not going to help you. What if your desired decisions make your family disappointed in you, which makes you feel guilty? Well, this is you're in the right place to do a lot of this kind of work because that's often what people do, right? And unfortunately, it happens a lot in families. It has a, it, they want you to make a decision in a certain way, and that doesn't. When you do that, sure, it may please them, but it doesn't please you. It's very unfulfilling. It's empty. It's like whenever I decided to completely change the trajectory of my life and become an insurance agent. My parents loved it because my dad's an insurance agent, and I knew I wasn't exactly going to like it, but I thought I could use that to buy my freedom. None of it worked out because none of it really aligned with my values. So you can go the rest of your life making decisions that please other people and yet leave yourself extremely unfulfilled. Okay, so let's break this down a little bit. When you do that for people, and it's unfortunate, but this is what normally happens, is that they demand more of you. They demand you to do more of that thing. Why? Because they're looking to get fulfillment out of you. They're like, well, if that person makes decisions based on my influence, that makes me feel good about me. And very much like power, this is very fleeting because they're not finding it in themselves. They're trying to validate themselves externally once again. So they feel a moment of like, "Ooh, that feels good," because I influenced someone else, and then it evaporates. And then what do they have to do? Well, I need more of this. So I need that person to do more of what I'm telling them to do. So oftentimes when you try to please people, what happens? They demand more of you. And so then in order to keep them pleased, you have to do more of what you don't want to do. The more of what is unfulfilling for you. So you got to make a choice here. Is that really good for them? And is that really good for you? No, it's not good for either of you. You might think, well, I don't want to disappoint those people. Well, if their disappointment and their fulfillment or their happiness is based on your decisions lining up with what they want, they've got a problem too. And you're just taking part in enabling that. You're just taking part in a very destructive cycle. That's not good for you and it's not good for them. It's making you unfulfilled and it's making them unaccountable for their own happiness. So you can break that cycle. It may disappoint them. They may blame you for the rest of your life. They may hold a grudge against you, but at least now you're fulfilled. At least now you're happy. So what's the choice there? And maybe, just maybe, they will wake up and say, you know what? Yeah, I got to take accountability for my own happiness, my own well-being. So either both people, you and that other person, can be unfulfilled, or you can break the cycle and at least make yourself happy and fulfilled and do the things that you want to do. And maybe they'll be disappointed in you, but you have to let that go after a while. I mean, anyway, that's the choice that I made in my life because trust me, I still deal with this in my extended family. And I'm just like, screw it. I'm the one who has to go to bed at night with myself and deal with myself. And every morning I have to wake up and look at myself in the mirror. They don't. Once I'm out of their sight, I'm mostly out of their mind. People don't think about you as much as you think they do. But I'm the one who has to deal with me 24/7. So if I'm unhappy, if I'm unfulfilled, I have to deal with that 24/7 versus they may be disappointed in a choice that I made. But once they're doing their thing and I'm out of their sight, they're not thinking about me. They're not disappointed because of the choices that I've made. It's only when they think about it that they might feel that way. So their little bit of time being disappointed in me versus my 24/7 being unhappy with myself and unhappy with my life. I think that the choice is pretty easy there. Let's see. Truly grateful. Gratitude is my fuel. All right. Leslie says, pride is not the opposite of shame, but its source. Agree. True humility is the only antidote to shame. Gratitude enables us to develop empathy towards others. Absolutely. There's just, I used to, when I would tell my mentor, Steve Andreas, that how grateful I was for his help. And he said, he would always say, gratitude is something you cannot have too much of. You can't overdose on gratitude. And too much, there's no such thing as too much gratitude in your life to the point that it makes your life bad in any way whatsoever. And he also said it's good for the giver and it's good for the receiver. There's nothing bad that you can really say about gratitude. It's just, it's got so much good in there. But pride, power, it won't take you far. Both are exaggerations of the self. Pride is seeing oneself as better than one actually is. Shame is seeing oneself as lesser than one actually is. Are you quoting straight from the book, Leslie? All right, that's all I have for today. I always end up staying on these things much longer than I expected, at 46 minutes. There are some resources below this video. They're free. I recommend you take advantage of them. They will get this thing started for you. If you're still wondering what do I mean by values and how to elicit those values, check the description below this video. It's all there. So I will be doing these lives for about 1 or 2 times a month to kind of supplement in between the times where I'm uploading my regular videos. The reason why I haven't been uploading those regular videos as regularly as I used to is because I'm putting a lot more effort into scripting them and shooting them and trying to make them the best that they can absolutely be. So that's why I'm doing fewer of those, but I am still doing them and they will keep coming. Can NLP be used for psychoanalysis? I'm not sure exactly how you mean that. I mean, it's NLP is it doesn't counteract psychoanalysis. I think you can weave NLP into almost anything because it's really about finding out what really works and then just using more of that. It's based in your subjective experience of how things work. So psychoanalysis is basically analyzing your thoughts and how you think about or frame things in your life. So they're completely compatible. So I don't really understand. It's kind of an odd question because I would wonder. I mean, why is that even a question? It fits very well because it has to do with the mind. So Lisa says, "Hi, Damon. Saddened to have missed you in London on Monday. Today, may up for it. Many thanks. You're welcome." Yeah, I had a great time in London this past. Well, it was just Monday. God, it feels weird. I've been back for a few days now. Still suffering a little jet lag. But yeah, I was in London. Taught for the first time in London, and I'll be coming back at least next year, maybe sooner if someone else hits me up to do a training there. But yeah, a lot of fun. I will be coming back to London next November, so next year, and I'm looking at really upping my in-person live trainings and talks. So can I make it to? Is that Massachusetts? MA or is that Maryland? I don't know my state initials very well, or is that even another country? Oh, Massachusetts, I think, because that's the first thing I said. If you know of an institute in Massachusetts that wants to host me, uh, let them, have them reach out to me, and I'd be happy to. I'm always open to doing whatever talks and trainings. I love talking about this stuff. If you haven't already recognized or noticed, and so I love to travel, and so yeah, reach out to me. Will you be doing an NLP training in London next year? Yes, I will be. I'm coming back. They've already the UK Hypnosis Convention has already sent me a thing saying, we'd like to have you come back. Let's see. Oh, thank you for all the the thank yous. It's very nice. I also saw you in London on Sunday evening. After watching you work, suddenly everything fell into place. Nice, thank you. Incredible experience. Everything makes sense now. So you were there in London. Oh yeah, I recognize you. Yeah, didn't we do a picture together? I think that's if you are who I remember you to be. Okay, yeah, email me. I can even put my email address here. Let's see. I just have them email me there. Um, oh, so you're the relaxation coach. Okay, cool. Yeah, I remember talking to you. Okay, cool. Yeah, so any inquiries about that, just shoot me an email. And like I said, I love to travel and love to teach. So they work really well together. And yeah, so thank you so much for joining this live. Like I said, I'll be doing more in between the videos that I upload. And if you have a request for a future live, a topic for a future live, let me know in the comments. I definitely take those into consideration. I have made many videos based on comments or requests from people, asking me to cover a particular subject. So happy to do that if it lines up with what I want to talk about. Yeah. So I do read your requests. I do read your comments, and I do respond to them. Like I said, if there's a topic that you want and I want to talk about it, I'll definitely do it. Okay, take care, everybody. Have a great weekend. Have a great Thanksgiving if you're American, and I'll see you on the next stream.